Tonight on Huckabee, presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Ignite your life with author Meguiar, Veranica and her incredible friends, saxophonist and songwriter Bill French. That's String Corley of the Music City Connection. And I'm your announcer, Keith Bildry. And now, here's Mike Huckabee!
Welcome, everyone. Hey, I am not a journalist. I don't even play one on TV. No, I'm a highly opinionated commentator, and my views are not secret. I don't for one moment pretend to be objective. I just don't. I've got strong convictions that are my platform. Now, journalists are supposed to be unbiased and virtually agnostic in regard to politics. But you'll be very hard-pressed to find many of those folks these days. Look, real journalism is as dead as the last string of Disney movies and Bud Light beer, okay? Dead. Totally. Most of those who claim to be journalists are as biased as me. And I've already said, I don't wear the striped shirt of a referee, but the team uniform of a constitutional, conservative, Christian, pro-life advocate. That's who I am. But despite my outspoken commentaries, I actually enjoy having civil conversations with people with whom I may not agree on a list of issues. Believe it or not, we really do try hard on this show to get people of various viewpoints to be our guests. There's hardly a week that goes by that we don't try to get a prominent Democrat to be on the show. And it's not to ambush them, not to berate them, or to confront them, but to genuinely treat them respectfully and graciously. Now, maybe it's the Southerner in me, but a guest should be treated like a guest, and a host ought to act with hospitality toward his or her guest. It's that simple. I'd have a lot more Democrats on this show if we could simply get them to agree to come. We've had some, and if you've ever seen those interviews, you know that they are given a very warm welcome, and we allow them to speak their minds without being interrupted or yelled at. My views are never threatened just because somebody sees the world differently than I do. If I believe what I say, and I say what I believe, hearing the positions of others, that doesn't intimidate me. It gives me an opportunity to test my beliefs in the face of respectful disagreement. That's America, how it's supposed to work. Well, tonight, my first guest on this show is a Democrat from one of the most storied names in American politics, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, I've been intrigued by his campaign for president and by the depth of his passion regarding issues. And I've also been intrigued by the irrational opposition that has risen up within his own party. Whether he and I agree on conclusions, that's for another time. But I sincerely welcome him tonight as someone I have come to respect for his having the courage of his convictions and the willingness to bring those convictions to you by way of this show. I'm not asking you to vote for him in the Democrat primary. That's entirely up to you. But I am asking that you give an ear to his story and his reasons for running for president of the United States. And I already know that our studio audience is going to join me in offering a very warm and heartfelt thanks that he respected us enough to come and sit for a conversation with me. Please welcome to our show for the first time, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Well, that's a nice welcome here for you.
Thank you all very much.
You know, these folks seem to like you better than some of the people in your own party. I'm amazed by...
Even my own family.
That's okay. My family doesn't like me much either, so I can relate to that. So what is it that Democrat establishment is so afraid of with you?
Well, I think because I'm a threat to President Biden, and the DNC has rallied around the president. It's interesting because the DNC has a rule that they have to be neutral, and it's part of their charter. Mm-hmm. But they violated that during the Bernie Sanders election. And Bernie Sanders afterwards sued them, and the courts made a holding that even though they have that as part of their charter, that they don't need to pay attention to it. So they can choose favorites. So this election, they've been very open about disparaging my campaign. And they have allies in the mainstream media at CNN, at NBC, ABC, CBS, and MSNBC. So in those, and the New York Times, et cetera. So in those media outlets, I don't get hearing in those outlets. And then I think also I'm a threat to other parts of the establishment, to the pharmaceutical cartel, to the military-industrial complex, to this corrupt collusion of state and corporate power that has put Wall Street's priorities ahead of the American middle class, and all of those entities that are really operating within the Beltway to strip mine the middle class of its wealth and its equity. And because I've spent 40 years suing those agencies, I think I'm probably more of a threat to them than any other candidate, because I understand how the agencies work and also how to unravel agency capture.
There are a lot of problems within the Republican Party, like there are in the Democrat Party, where it's all about protecting the institutions and the people who run them, rather than protecting the working people who stand on concrete floors all day and sweat through their socks. That's what I think is happening. People are listening to your message. It's kind of an old-fashioned message that your father and your uncle, that they taught. And it's almost like that today there are so many people in power that don't want to hear that message. Why?
Well, they're in power because they're part of that system. And, and particularly, I think, we're seeing more and more kind of the weaponization of the enforcement agencies, of CIA, of FBI, and the politicization of those agencies, which was really off limits and verboten in the past. And, my family's had a 60-year fistfight with the CIA. And my uncle, in fact, among the documents that they won't release illegally, they're withholding after his death, there's 4,000 documents that President Trump promised to release and then did not for some reason, that President Biden promised to release. And there, among those 4,000 documents is my uncle's plan, John Kennedy's plan, that was written by two of his closest aides, Dick Goodwin and Arthur Schlesinger, for reorganizing the CIA to make it so that it begins again to serve Americans' national security and the public interest, rather than, as you say, the institutional interests of that agency and the mercantile interests of, certain industries, the pharmaceutical and oil industry. And I think that is a real threat to, some of these entities inside the Beltway.
You have done something that even Kamala Harris, the vice president, who was supposed to be in charge of the border, really hasn't done. You went down to the border and looked at it firsthand. What did you see when you were there? What needs to be done as you see it?
I was shocked by what I saw. And actually, Governor, took me 3 days to actually absorb what I was looking at. First of all, I arrived in Yuma, and there's a gap in the wall there. And I arrived in Yuma at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I watched, over the next 2 hours, I watched 300 people come through. I thought I would see a lot of people from Latin America and Central America. But the first group of 110 were all African. They were from young men from West Africa. And I was not able to talk to them because they were already being processed by the Border Patrol. The second group that came through, there was 2 more busloads. The buses are owned by the Mexican drug cartels. There were 55 people in each bus, and I interviewed each one of them. They were from Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, Tibet, and India. So there was only 2 families the whole night from Latin America, and they were the only 2 families who had legitimate asylum claims.
And these were families, but most of what you saw were mostly young men, right?
Most of them were not families. Most of them were individuals, and they were adults. And then the weird thing that's happened was once they come through, the Border Patrol no longer patrols the border. They've become essentially travel agents. Everybody now, the Mexican drug cartels are now running U.S. immigration policy. 7 million, there's no effort to stop them. They come in, they're fingerprinted. If they have a criminal record, they're diverted. But if they don't, they're put on a plane within 4 days to any destination that they want in the United States. If they do not have money for a plane ticket, then the Border Patrol buys them a plane ticket. And they're landing now then, on cities like New York. 100,000 have landed in New York. They're crushing the social safety net. And the people who believe that this is the right thing from a humanitarian point of view, it's a humanitarian crisis. It's a disaster, it's a catastrophe. The people who are coming through are given a court date 7 years in the future.
7 years.
So then they're here for 7 years, but they are in a limbo status. Well, they can't legally work. And so they become targeted by unscrupulous employers who hire them usually on construction sites for $5 or $6 an hour, which they can't live, so they're still sleeping on the sidewalk. And they're dampening the pay for American construction workers, unionized construction workers. But plus, they're absolutely devastating the social safety net. In New York, they're now putting them in encampments on Roosevelt Island, which is where all the sporting fields for New York middle schools and elementary schools and high schools are. New York kids who were locked in during the COVID epidemic for 3 years, and a lot of these are kids that are potentially scholarship trajectory kids, could not play their sports for 2 years. Finally, they're on the sporting fields. Now those sporting fields, Mayor Adams is putting migratory encampments there so they can't play sports anymore. This is not good for anybody in the country. There are 7 million that have come across over the past 3 years. And, it's crushing our country. I worked with Cesar Chavez during the last 20 years of his life on pesticide issues. He was a very close ally of my father's. But the other big issue for him during that part of his life was closing the border, because he saw what it was doing to the migration was doing to reduce the leverage of legitimate farm workers to demand decent pay and wages and conditions in their employment. This isn't good for anybody. And another thing is, everybody who came across the border that night knew exactly what was going to happen. The Mexican drug cartels are advertising on TikTok and on YouTube all over the world and saying, you give us $10,000 or $15,000 and we will get you in the United States. And here's what you do. You get a plane to Mexico City, then we will get you a visa. You then are put on a domestic flight inside Mexico to Mexicali. We will then pick you up at the airport. There's a parking lot there filled with buses that are owned by the cartels. And they drive them up to the border, which we saw. And 55 people get off each bus and cross the border, and nobody's ever stopped. There's 9 Border Patrol agents that have committed suicide during the last year because they're utterly demoralized because of what's happening.
This is so disturbing that, we're not hearing this because the news media are not telling us this. And, you know, I think it requires someone like you that goes and looks at it, spends a little time there. I want us to pick up there when we come back from the break. There is a lot more that we have to talk about with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. after the break, so please stick around. We'll be right back.
Coming up on the show, Barry Meguiar brings an inspiring message in his new book. And later, smooth jazz by saxophonist Phil French. You're watching Huckabee. MikeHuckabee.com and sign up for his free newsletter and follow @GovMikeHuckabee on Twitter.
Welcome back as we continue our conversation with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And in your campaign for the presidency, you know, we've talked about the fact that many people in your own party have tried to shut you down, but you recently had to sue both Google and YouTube because they were shutting you down, trying to take your voice away from things you wanted to talk about. It's frightening to me that a judge decided, no, they're private companies, and even though they basically operate like monopolies, they just tell you that you can't talk. We don't want to hear what you have to say. That's disturbing from a First Amendment standpoint.
Well, we do have one of our cases which has yielded a decision by Judge Doty, a 155-page decision. We brought that case. It's called Kennedy versus Biden, and then the Attorney Generals of Louisiana and Republican Attorney General of Louisiana and Missouri brought a companion case, and now they've been merged. And this really good decision by a judge in Louisiana has now ordered the White House to have no more contact with Google and with any of or Facebook or any of the social media sites. My name is all over that lawsuit because I was the first person. I was censored by both administrations at government orders. And, you know, a private company like Google or YouTube have the right to censor you. And it's not right because they occupy the public square. They are the public square. But the law is pretty clear that, you know, they're like a publisher. They can publish you for no reason or any reason. But they cannot censor you if the government ordered them to do it.
Yeah.
And what this decision Judge Doty said is that, the government was ordering within 37 hours of President Biden taking the oath of office, the White House was ordering Google, ordering Twitter and Facebook to remove my accounts. And it wasn't because I was spreading misinformation, which people say, but you know, my fact-checking operation is probably more robust than any news organization in this country. I have 350 PhD scientists, MD physicians who are on our medical advisory board. Oh, I don't publish anything that is not peer-reviewed, or is not sourced to a peer-reviewed publication or government database. They had to, in fact, internally invent a new category. So they have misinformation, disinformation. For me, they used a word called malinformation, and that means misinformation that is true, but is nonetheless inconvenient for the government, and the government wants to be taken down.
That is disturbing.
And what they were doing was they were threatening Google or threatening Twitter to remove their Section 230 immunity. So these companies, these social media companies, rely on a section called Section 230 of the Communications Act. And Section 2, you know, normally, if you publish a defamatory article about me in the New York Times, an editorial, I can sue you, but I can also sue the New York Times. So Congress passed a law that applies to the social media site that says that if somebody publishes a defamatory post on those sites, that the site, the social media site, is immune. You can't sue them. And that makes sense because otherwise they would have to vet with attorneys every single post, and it would be the end of their business model. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg said it's existential to us. If we don't have that Section 230 protection, we're out of business overnight. And so what the White House was telling Twitter and Facebook is, if you don't censor Kennedy, that we will take away your Section 230 immunity. And so, and they were not only censoring me, they were censoring a lot of people. And they weren't, it wasn't just public health information. They were censoring information about the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
They were at one case, they censored a satirical article about President Biden and his wife that had nothing to do with any issue. It was just, it was a satire. And so, when the ruler can silence, when the government can silence its critic, it has license for any atrocity.
It's disturbing. And I wanted to mention that you were at a congressional hearing. It was one of the most compelling I've ever seen. It was on censorship. You were there to talk about censorship, and the whole thing was people from the Democrat Party in Congress were doing everything they could to censor you in the context of a hearing regarding censorship.
Yeah, that was ironic.
Beyond ironic. It was almost comical. It was so bizarre.
Yeah, it was. And they, not only did 100 Congress people signed a petition to make sure that I couldn't talk at a censorship hearing, but then when I got there, they made a motion to go into executive session so the public couldn't hear me when I testified. And they voted, on along party lines, 8-10, to censor. But the 10 Republicans voted to let me speak, and the 8 Democrats voted to censor me. But then they would ask me questions, and they would not permit me to answer, which you can do in Congress. And, which was another sort of surreal situation. But luckily, I was allowed to talk. And, it was, as you said, people have told me that in 40 or 50 years of observing congressional hearings, that was the strangest one that they have ever seen.
It was, in fact. I want to tell you, I appreciate the convictions that you have come, particularly the fight for the middle class, fight for workers. I want to say thank you for coming tonight. It is an honor to have you. And I think you're striking a nerve. I know your numbers are shooting up in places like South Carolina, and that scares the daylights out of some of the people who don't want to see your message out. We're delighted to be able to have this time to visit with you. I hope we get to do it again. But thank you. Bobby, thank you for coming and sharing with us and for being with us. It's been an honor. I hope that you will follow Mr. Kennedy on social media. We've got all of his links for you at Huckabee.tv, and you can go directly to his campaign, get his message, and find out what it is he's saying that has some people really, really nervous in Washington. Right now, Keith Bilbrey is going to tell us what's ahead on the show. Keith?
Well, stay right where you are. Get ready to laugh at the news on In Case You Missed It. That's right after the break.
Good stuff.
That was great.
I'm sorry to interrupt here. But, it is your birthday, or it was yesterday.
It was. Yes, it was.
And the cast and crew chipped in, and we know how much you like dogs.
I love dogs.
So we got you a little present here.
Oh.
I think you'll like it.
Oh, this is great. This is a little cushion with Janet and me holding.
Yeah.
Gumbo and Bandit. That's really sweet. Let's see what is it. Oh, this is
What
awesome.
else you got there?
Here's one of just Bandit on both sides. Look at that. That is great. And here's Gumbo. Who couldn't love those dogs, huh?
Trey.
Thank you.
Hit it.
Oh, we have to do it.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Everybody, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Governor.
That is so very kind. By the way, you know, sometimes at the end of a birthday song, somebody will say, and many more. Mm-hmm. Janet and I had a friend several years ago, and we finished singing, and somebody said, and many more, and she honestly said, just who is many more?
Well, you know, I've wondered about
She really did.
Because, I mean,
swear.
Every show you ever hear publicized, they'll say many more. And I go to see many more, and she never shows up.
Must be a cousin of Minnie Mouse or something like that.
That's what I'm thinking.
Could be. Well, thank you very much. Okay, from brown trees to really white food, we've got the most colorful news of the week on In Case You Missed It. All righty. White people love Chinese food. But Keith, did you know that Chinese people are not so crazy about white people food?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's a social media fad in China where people share their reactions to eating what they think of as white American food. Low-calorie, tasteless, eat-on-the-go foods like bagged salads or a sandwich made with one slice of processed meat and processed cheese on white bread with mayo. One Chinese commenter said that this food can drain the soul and the human warmth out of you. But on the plus side, quote, he says, it helps you learn what it's like to be dead.
Oh.
Wow. I mean, they even prefer North Korean food, and that's large helpings of grass clippings and tree bark.
Yep.
By the way,
they've done that. Yeah.
One Chinese person who watched a colleague eat oatmeal with low-fat yogurt, half an apple, and a carrot for 10 straight years said, if such a meal is to extend life, what is the meaning of life?
And my point exactly.
I mean, you know, I think we finally found something in common between China and Southerners, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Burger Kings in Thailand invented what they must think is the ultimate American white people food. It's called the ultimate cheeseburger. No meat on it. It's a bun with 20, that's right, 20 slices of American cheese stacked up on it. Yeah. I mean, that's cheesier than your dad jokes, Steve. That's really bad.
Well, where's the burger part of it? I mean,
it's just a cheeseburger.
Ooh.
Anyway, a lot of people are trying it once. And those whose mouths aren't glued shut and could actually talk said they probably won't order it again. Now, some won't order it because it's just too much cheese. But the rest, well, they're not going to order it again because they had heart attacks halfway through the first one.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of a food that could kill you, a female Huck's criminal mastermind was arrested at a St. Petersburg Beach, Florida restaurant after she got into a dispute with a man and she threw a burrito at him. But she missed her target and the flying burrito struck another man in the face.
This wasn't your wife, was it?
No, it wasn't.
It sounds like something she must.
Sounds like it could have been.
She's here. I better be careful.
Oh, yeah, you better be careful. There was a band in the 60s. I don't know if you remember them, called the Flying Burrito Brothers.
I remember them. Wow.
I think this is how they got their name. Mm-hmm. This lady. Anyway, the police report didn't say whether the man who got beaned by the burrito, get that? See what I did there?
Yeah,
beaned by the burrito. Didn't know whether the man was injured, but to be on the safe side, paramedics checked his cholesterol.
Yeah.
Anyway, the woman was charged with disorderly conduct and had to pay $250 in bail. They hope that will keep her from making a run for the border.
Oh.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, rim shot on
Yeah,
that,
good one.
please.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but in Beverly, England, the city Christmas tree was still standing in July. Yeah, and here's what was happening. They were going to take it down, but they discovered that there was a wood pigeon who had built a nest in that tree.
Well, you can't get rid of that.
No, you can't, because wildlife laws there ban disturbing a bird while they're nesting. So they couldn't remove the tree. It stayed up until it got brown, and the sidewalk under it had dropped more needles than is on the sidewalk of San Francisco.
Oh!
Pretty bad.
Some of you are just not catching up with that.
They've just figured it out. Anyway, they couldn't remove the Christmas lights because the baby birds were so used to all the flashing lights that they left the nest and flew to Las Vegas.
Oh.
Anyway, by the time they finally took the tree down, it was August, and it was time to put the Christmas decorations back up again.
Of course.
So there we go. Finally, in our video of the week, we bring you some of the world's greatest magicians. Well, this may be the most amazing yet. Watch how fast this kitten learned how to make a coin disappear. Watch, this is just so good. Look.
Wow.
Did you see that? I mean, this cat is so good at grabbing money and making it disappear that its owner named it Hunter. Well, Heath, I think that seems like the perfect place to end this bit. But until next time, just remember, we read the news.
Oh, you outdid yourself tonight, Governor. Next, ignite your life through Christ with Barry Meguiar. Then be amazed and astonished with Veranica and her incredible friends. Spoiler alert, her friends are poodles. That's coming up on Huckabee.
And welcome back, everyone. Barry Meguiar not only turned Meguiar's Car Wax from a small family business into America's #1 car wax, but he's also the founder of the Ignite America Ministry and host of the TV shows Car Crazy and Ignite Your Life. His brand new #1 Amazon bestseller is called Ignite Your Life, Defeat Fear with Effortless Faith. Please welcome a good friend, Barry Meguiar. Barry, good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You know, a lot of people, both watching as well as in the studio, have probably used Meguiar car wax at some point.
It's a possibility. Yes.
It's a good possibility. It's been in your family for a long time, but you devote most of your time not to restoring cars, but people.
Yeah, I was buffing cars in body shops. We were doing $600,000 a year. I'm the third generation to live in the business. And God inspired me to go retail. But at the same time, he impressed upon me, once I get to heaven, it's not going to matter how many bottles of car wax I sold. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He actually sent a guy into my office right when I was saying I should go into full-time ministry. And he didn't know anything about that. I prayed the prayer like 20 minutes earlier. And he walked in and he asked me how things were going. And I talked about sharing my faith a little bit. God's given you a wonderful ministry here, hadn't he? I said, wait, it's like Twilight Zone. Why would he say that right now? I said, why would you say that? He says, well, a pastor can't reach the people you're reaching. But as a businessman, you can. It's obvious that your business is your pulpit.
Interesting.
And that was 1973. And from then until now, I've recognized my business is not my God. It's my business. I love my business. I love shiny cars. I love my business. But when I get to heaven, we're not going to be talking about how many bottles of car wax I sold. It's just not going to be. The only thing that's going to matter once we get to heaven, how many people are in heaven because of our influence.
Interesting.
And that's the key. So instead of moving one person a day, the way to do it, Karen and I have the world's greatest wife. For 50 years, we've been sharing our faith every day. And our goal is move everybody, not one person, move everybody every day a little closer to Jesus. And if you do that, the amazing things happen.
That's a whole different kind of shine, isn't it, Barry?
Well,
I mean, from car wax.
I got to tell you, because 80% of our audience right now are living in fear.
What are people afraid of? What do you think people are afraid of?
I mean, what's not to be afraid of today, right?
Look at the headlines.
How do you defeat fear? This is a big issue, you know? God's purpose is to seek and save the lost. So what he's saying to us, if we live every day, folks, to seek and save the lost, or we say move everybody every day closer to Jesus, we live in the promise of Romans 8:28. And he pours out his blessings, and even in the bad stuff, he turns it to good. Because he honors his word.
I think the key thing is it doesn't say that everything is good. Some things are not good, but they work together for good. The big difference.
And God's view of good is what will get more people into heaven. You know, even the bad stuff is good stuff. When you realize God's in it, you just live for God, you just go for it. And Gary and I laugh all the time. We say, okay, what do you have in store for us now, God? Another lesson or somebody else you want to lead us to? When you're in travail, your testimony has far more power.
The fact that you have discovered a pulpit on the hood of a car is a remarkable story. It's all in Barry's book, Ignite Your Life. If you want to get a copy of the book and find out how to get it, You can go to Huckabee.tv. We have links to ignite your life. You can download a free sample. And I think once you do that, you'll want to read the whole thing. Right now, I'm going to do a little shine of my own. I'm going to shine over to Keith Bilbrey. He's going to tell us what we're about to ignite next on this show. Keith?
Well, up next, an amazing dog show with Veranica and her incredible friends, and then a jazz performance with saxophonist Phil French. We're celebrating Governor's birthday with 25% off everything in the Huckabee store. Go to Huckabee.tv through the end of this month for an automatic discount.
And welcome back, everybody. One of the things we really love getting to do when you're in the theater is hearing the phenomenal music of the best band in all of Nashville, the Music City, Trey Corley and the Music City Connection. Well, my next guest is a 13-year-old third-generation animal trainer and Guinness World Record holder. You may have seen her on TV or maybe in Branson, where she spent the summer entertaining families at Silver Dollar City. Now it's your turn to be wowed by the amazing Veranica and her incredible friends. Veranica, take it away. Ready?
Mr. Governor, if you don't mind.
What are we going to do?
Mr. Governor, if you don't mind, do you think you can help me out?
I think I can.
All right, so can you grab this jump rope for me, please?
Sure.
Sorry, I'm going to sit him down.
I tell you what, after watching these dogs, I realize how worthless mine are. I mean, I really...
Rita, come here. All right, if you can hold it perfectly like that, awesome. Rita,
Oh. Oh, that's great.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Governor.
you.
I also have one more thing to show you. Could you help me with one more trick?
Of course. I would love to. These are amazing dogs.
Rita, Roma, Bore. Roma, Bore.
I think it's the language. That's what my dogs are missing. They don't speak.
Do you think you can hold their front paws
Absolutely.
and just go in a circle?
Okay, just like this?
Yes, that's perfect. Bore.
Oh, Macarena.
Perfect.
Am I doing well?
Yes, you're doing perfect.
These are beautiful and wonderful dogs. And I want to tell you something. If you want to follow the amazing Veranica and her friends on social media, because I want to, and if you want to book them to entertain at your event, here's what you do. Go to Huckabee.tv. Right now, talking about going to the dogs, I'm about to go to Keith Bilbrey. By the way, he is trained to speak on command. He will tell us what's coming up next. Bark, bark, bark.
Don't go away. The very talented saxophonist Phil French performs next on Huckabee. Next week for NATO Commander Philip Breedlove and a song from gospel artist Rachel Hale.
Well, you know, I was saying to my next guest that I kind of feel sorry for him. I mean, you never want to follow kids or dogs, ever. And he's following both a kid with a bunch of dogs.
Yes, sir.
You're amazing. Phil French is a gifted saxophonist, songwriter, and producer. He's made his mark in both the gospel and jazz worlds. The former musical director for Grammy winner Yolanda Adams, Phil has performed with top stars from Grover Washington Jr. to the Winans. He believes music is a way to cross all barriers and show everyone the glory of God. Please give a very warm welcome to Phil French. Phil, great having you here.
Blessings, sir. It's a blessing to be here, man.
Yeah, I was thinking when this beautiful thing going on with the dogs, and I'm thinking, poor Phil, he's got to really nail this, right?
Man, there's nothing like canine love in the world.
Oh,
so
it's absolutely fantastic. You know, speaking of love, you have a love for music, but people who hear you have a love for you, something that started when you were in the public schools in Maryland as a kid.
Yes, sir.
Who inspired you and encouraged you to do this so that you could make a living at it?
Well, I grew up I'm a church boy, you know, so the pastor's son was then the minister of music. Well, he's a pastor now, Pastor Jonathan Carson. He nurtured me along initially. He's the first one to really kind of motivate me outside of my parents to actually play the saxophone. I learned it in school. I saw it in a regular music class, and I saw the advertisement coming around. I just fell in love with this big curly thing with all these keys. The curiosity got me, and I was so blessed that my mother took a part-time job to allow me to play saxophone.
There was some sacrifice in your family for you to be able to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
a lot of families would have just said, no, we can't afford that. But your mother didn't. She wanted you to be able to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, it's turned out pretty good, Phil. I mean,
God is good, man.
You know, there's something that you have discussed, and it's called the circular breathing technique, and I've never heard of that before. What in the world is that, and how does it relate to playing the saxophone?
Well, circular breathing is a technique that allows you to hold a note for a long time. Kenny G is the most popular guy you may hear that does it. He holds a note forever, and he looks at his watch, and, you know, initially, from what I hear, from what I read, the technique was developed for snake dancers, you know, so as long as you could keep a snake dancing, it was fine. So that technique was developed, and it's translated over to wind instruments to allow you to have long phrasings and to get nice tones and complete phrases without taking deep breaths of air to get your phrasing out.
If it would keep me from snakes, I would learn how to do it. I really would.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It would be worth it.
Absolutely.
We're not going to make you do any snake dances, but by golly, we're sure going to make you blow that
If I had a
horn.
snake out there, I probably would do it. Yeah, definitely.
If you had a snake out here, I would be 17 blocks away from here.
And I'll be doing it from 16.
Okay, there you go. Well, Phil is going to head for the stage. Keith is going to tell you how to get more of the great music of the one and only Phil French, which you're going to want. Keith?
Well, to find all of Phil's albums and upcoming shows and social media, visit Huckabee.tv. Now, performing Been So Good with Trey Corley and the Music City Connection, here's Phil French.